for the people that are out there that are thinking about building their brand, don't
Mhm.
be afraid to niche down. Do not be afraid to niche down. There's some people who are like, oh no, if you
Yep,
niche down, you're going to miss this
exact
whole market of people over there. No, those people weren't for you, right? So
yep,
they weren't going to come to you in the first place.
yep.
You need to niche down to the people that you're uniquely designed to speak to.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Family Man Building a Brand podcast. Today, we have a special guest, and today's guest is Dr. James Bryant. Tell a little about Dr. Bryant. He's a seasoned engineer, an executive coach, and a trusted advisor with over 20 years of experience. He is the founder of Engineer Your Success LLC, a boutique coaching, consulting, and leadership development firm that is dedicated to helping business owners and senior level engineers achieve success in business and in life. Dr. Bryant is also the host of Engineer Success podcast, where he shares insights, tips, and strategies for achieving success as an engineer and a person. He's a certified John Maxwell leadership speaker, trainer, and coach. He's also a dedicated husband and a father. He understands the importance of having success at work and at home, and he's committed to helping others do the same, which is perfectly suited for exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
Of
So thank
course.
you very much coming on the show, and welcome, Doctor.
Of course.
No,
Well,
welcome
Cecil,
in,
thank
welcome in.
you so much. I really appreciate being here. Appreciate you guys reaching out.
Of
Love
course.
what you guys are doing here.
Thank you.
Really talking about, the blending of family and entrepreneurship. And I think really us as men need more shows to love on us to kind of begin to highlight the things that we are doing because
Definitely.
sometimes we get a bad rap. And so I
Yes.
think it's great what you guys are doing.
Thank you,
Perfect.
man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it. I
Appreciate
mean,
it. Of
and
course.
I think exactly why we put this together because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the empowerment of others. But like you said, I think we get a bad rap where to the extent it always focuses on, I'm not going to say the negative aspects of being a man, but then we are not celebrated enough in the ways we are supposed to. So then we can continue to appreciate the role of a husband, a father, and a man in the family and how we continue to build our socioeconomic lives and all those good things. So, but anyway, appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. And as we get started, I wanted you to take the opportunity to tell the audience about yourself. We have a lot of questions ourselves, but hey, it's all about that.
You're right.
I mean, essentially, in the intro, you summed it up. I
Got it.
am an executive coach. I have a boutique leadership development, executive coaching, and consulting firm, Engineer Your Success LLC. I started that firm really it was birthed out of my ability to design and live a life where I was able to win at work and at home. And I started looking around and seeing that other people were struggling with that very thing. And so I decided to start building my practice around that concept.
Okay,
Well,
cool.
dope.
Sounds good. I mean, interesting. And funny, before we got started, Ralph was asking, he's like, I don't know what kind of engineer. So, I mean, we'll just let you
Civil,
dive into that.
Okay.
civil engineer. So,
Okay.
Okay.
so I actually went to a specialty high school in Philadelphia. I grew up in Philadelphia.
Oh,
I went to the Philadelphia High School for Engineering and Science. And then I had got my undergraduate degree in civil engineering from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. I have a master's degree and a PhD in civil infrastructure system.
okay.
And then I have worked both in the private sector, in the public sector for state DOT, as well as
Okay.
for a nonprofit, but managing a really high level $70 million applied research program where we were looking at how can we renew our nation's infrastructure
Okay.
and how can we do those projects better, more cost effective, more efficiently. And I just had a great time just continuing to grow in my career.
Dope.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Bryant, again, in the beginning of this, we talked about how we probably aren't as celebrated. And to be honest, man, I feel like a lot of times, we come from behind the eight ball. We don't have that one up. We don't have that step stool to get you there. So I wonder, you've accomplished a lot and you've accomplished some rarity, some things that we would consider rarity. Tell me, what was your parental background? You grew up in Philly. There's Will Smith. We see all these things, especially being from the West Coast. But what were your parents like? To help build such a great man that you have become?
Well, first, thank you for the compliment.
Of course.
Number two is I was blessed to grow up in a great two-parent household.
Okay,
So
cool.
both of my mom and my dad, they were there. My father, I didn't consider my father to be an entrepreneur, but he was. He had a job where he was welding the sides of 18-wheeler trucks. So he
Yeah.
would do that, but he also had his own auto body repair shop. And so myself, my brothers, my cousins, all of us were exposed to entrepreneurship, but it wasn't entrepreneurship from the standpoint of, oh, we're going to build a business, we're going to grow this thing. It was entrepreneurship out of necessity.
Yeah.
My father wasn't looking to, build a network of auto body repair shops. He was trying to do what he loved to do and make ends meet. And so being able to go there, work with my dad in the shop, those were a lot of the formative things for me because I learned a lot about hard work and dedication and the fact that hard work alone is not going to be the thing that helps you to succeed. The work alone without the connections and the people that without continuing to grow, you will maximize what you can do with hard work, but there's so much more that you can do above that level. So think of it, if you only depend on hard work, there's a cap to what you can do.
Of course.
When you start understanding the power of connections and the power of personal growth, then you start to lift the lid off of what you can accomplish.
Dope. No doubt.
I mean,
Yeah,
that,
man,
that
I can
makes a
totally
lot of
agree.
sense.
Exactly, man. It makes sense, especially from the point of, the fact that your dad set a foundation for you. Your dad set a foundation for you, and you took that and you ran with it. And I'm sure you're re-implementing it within your immediate family now. But tell me, like, where exactly, dabble a little bit about your family setup and things of that sort, but which is more of a passion as well, too? Were you more passionate about becoming that civil engineer and grabbing these public and private sector jobs? Or were you more passionate about having that entrepreneur side and taking this role that you went to school for and turn that into a business? What was
So
more of it?
that the entrepreneurial spirit was a
Okay.
seed that was planted, but was incubating for 15, 16 years.
Oh,
So for me, it was go to school. I'm going to get out of the neighborhood. So, you only get out of the neighborhood a
yeah.
couple of different ways. People get arrested, they go to jail,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they get shot,
Yeah.
either something, they may OD, something like that.
Yeah.
Those get out. You got the folks that are going to school,
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah.
that's escaping through education. And then you also have those folks that go through like scholarships and sports,
Of
right?
course.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's typically what happens. So I grew up in the the mid 80s. I was in high school in the 80s, and so it was like, okay, what am I going to do? I don't know what I was going to do. So I can't say that I had this great drive to be an engineer, but what I can tell you is that I had a friend. His name is Jeffrey Pender. He still lives in the Philadelphia area. He's several years older than I was, and I can distinctly remember being outside playing with my a Godzilla toy, right? Punching hand in the snow. And he came across the street and kind of played with me for a little bit. I was about maybe 13, 14.
Yeah.
He was older in college, but the relationship that we formed really was crucial for my development because I was able to see someone in the neighborhood who was
Mhm.
working through getting out through education. He
Uh,
was going to school to be a pharmacist. And so not only, like from that day on, every weekend we would hang out for a couple hours. We might play some video games. He would take me to go play basketball
so,
with some of his college buddies. And it was a really formative experience for me just to help shape me and to show me what's possible. And so I would say, in addition to my parents, in addition to, our Christian background and going to church and all of the and entrepreneurship, that relationship that I had with Jeff was one of the transformational things for me at that
Wow. Pretty, pretty good. I mean, it's interesting that you remember going that far and just all the things that you said that your parents put into you. But you did mention initially when you were just talking about the power of connection and networking and how important that is. And it's interesting because that's how I got to know who you are. And it's so funny because to say it for the audience, I met you through my mentor, my coach, Jerome Myers, has been on the show before. And that's how I got to know you. And you went to, I guess you both I'm guessing you both went to North Carolina
Yeah,
A&T.
we did at different times, but yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
also both went there.
And that's what's interesting. I wanted to point out at different times. And then this is so interesting because I went to high school in a completely different continent. And one of my very close friends in high school went to the same college here in North Carolina when he
Wow.
migrated from the Gambia to North Carolina. But I didn't know any of this until I mentioned his name to Jerome, and Jerome then said to him, I gave him his first job as an engineer.
Wow.
So, I
Wow.
mean, this is like crazy because I'm sure you went
That's
there
dope.
before him and then
Yep.
my friend. So this is three levels or three connections of people that I met differently or through almost like the degrees of separation. And you all went to the same school and you guys are all engineers. But I want to go back to you saying you went to an engineering school. How did that
Yeah.
come about? I mean, like, did your parents intentionally send you to an engineering school or did you apply? I mean, how did that even
Oh, well,
happen?
so, as a middle school kid or
Wow.
as a elementary middle school kid, I was really good at math and science.
Okay.
And so it
Cool.
was one of those things. Hey, you're really good at math and science. Here's some opportunities that are for you. I also did a lot with music and drama as well. So the choices that I had was I could go to one of the performing arts high schools or apply
Okay.
to go to one of the specialty performing arts high schools, or I could apply to go to the engineering and science, George Washington Carver High School for Engineering and Science.
Okay.
And at that time, just, I'm not thinking about entrepreneurship. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm thinking about career progression.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the engineering school because engineering sounds cool. Now, I knew nothing
Crazy.
about what engineers do. Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was kind of my take. Oh, okay. I'm going to go do that. And that's what I did. And it's interesting because I was not a great student. So
Okay.
listen to me. I was not a great student.
Yeah.
In high school, I can remember taking like, I think it was what geometry and some of the other ones. And I was like, oh, all of these rules and all of this stuff,
Yeah.
I really had to study.
Okay.
But not always being a great student was a positive for me. And the reason is it caused me to actually study.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
so for those folks that are listening in that you may, you may be a senior in high school, you may be starting off in college and you may be like, man, this is hard. Yeah, sometimes it is hard. And sometimes that hardness is what's needed to actually shape you into who you need to be, to actually start instituting the habits that you need to put into place in your life so
Mhm.
that you can achieve and live the dream that you want. And so don't be afraid of hard.
Okay. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense because it's funny, like these are the conversations we're having a lot. I was having the same conversation with my wife. I was having the conversation with my father the other day. Just putting in hard work. I mean, put in work. I mean, because I would always say in high school as well, I probably I wasn't an A student. I wasn't even a B student. I'd probably say I was a C student. I got A's and I got B's. And when I came to college, I guess studying hard or things like that, I would always say my first year in college was quite easy for me, maybe because of the educational system that I went through and things of that nature. But now as an adult, we are getting to understand the importance of maybe the path we went through so
Yeah.
we are able to impart that into our kids and maybe mold them in the direction. Maybe we could say maybe our parents didn't more so do for us. So we get to see it's almost like that idea of when people even talk about generational wealth and all these different things, we get to do what we would have liked our parents to do for us. So we get
Right.
to actually have a front row seat. So we're
Mhm.
able to do that for our parents. But also, I guess for you having gone through that saying, okay, I wasn't a great student to the ultimate level of education, which is a PhD.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
no.
And so
go
the
ahead.
interesting thing is that I was a good student, but for each of us, there may be topics that challenge us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the
Definitely.
mistake that we can make sometimes is when you're used to doing well, you're used to getting A's, and you come up on that topic or that subject that challenges you. The first thing that you want to do, or the first thing that I wanted to do was become disinterested. right?
Okay.
Whatever. I'm not even gonna study because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm not gonna do well. You become disinterested and you don't do well. So then you start living with the fact that you're not doing well. Only way that you're gonna get through that is to actually own the fact that you need help.
Yeah.
Own the fact that you have to put in
Yeah.
additional work.
Yep.
A lot of at least in the beginning, I didn't want to own that fact. And so
Okay.
it's not that I was a totally flunking student.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more so though, but it's more so there will be things in life that come upon you that you will come across that will be hard for you. That
Right.
doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean that you need to give up. It may mean that you need to buckle down. It may mean that you need to change your approach to how you're attacking that problem.
Okay.
So for me, it was taking more time to study, starting to understand the base root of the equations in their
Mhm.
simplest form, learning how to derive the equations that I needed from the basic equation. Once
Gotcha.
I started doing that, things started opening up for me a whole lot because now I wasn't looking in a book for an answer. I was looking for a basic equation that I could manipulate and evolve into the equation that I needed for the answer. And
Okay.
that process right there in college is one of the things that I still carry with me today. Because sometimes we're looking for solutions, but we need to take it back down to the basics and say, okay, from this basic piece right here, whether it's are you getting enough sleep? You say that exercise is important to you. Are you going to the gym? You say that your family is important to you. Are you scheduling time to
Okay.
invest in those relationships? Getting back down to the basics and understanding the basics and how those basics can help you solve those bigger problems that you may be facing.
Okay. Cool.
And
Makes
yeah, definitely makes sense, man. And I know earlier, talked about growing up in a Christian home. So I understand that you're definitely a man of faith. And one of the
Mhm.
messages that I got from church maybe about 2 weeks ago was, the pastor gave an analogy of a house full of rats. There's a cause of it, and there's the actual situation that's happening in. So you can set a million traps inside the home and catch the millions of rats, but you didn't get to the root cause. There's still going to be more
Right.
coming in from that crack underneath the floor. So I can definitely relate to that. That makes the most sense. Once that message hit me, it taught me now to get to the fundamental and the foundational things of everything that I'm doing within business. That helps me be more efficient, things of that sort. And also I can relate, man. I went to a math and science high school. It was out here in California, they call it magnet, which is like it's like a more privatized public school, so we're kind of sectioned away from the other public school students and we had a more focused education. And realistically, man, I'm a nurse by trade, but um
Mhm.
but I understood my passion early enough. And once I understood my passion, for some reason, the nursing just started lowering on the totem pole. It wasn't as fun to do anymore. Cecil and them were going to the clubs on Friday nights. I'm at work from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So and slowly, yeah, the 9 to 5, the aspect that was actually paying my bills and things of that sort very well started lowering. And I was willing to take, a pay cut, or I would even say you can consider this being a career demotion just to feel better doing this on a daily basis, man. So everything you broke down, I totally get it. We can totally relate. But I kind of want to hop into how you really got into the civil engineering. Now we've discussed you
Okay.
going all the way up to college and things of that sort. But what was your process? Because we may have listeners that are going to go through the same exact journey you went through. Did you go private first? Did you go public first? Did you, what exactly was your process the minute you got out of college?
Oh man, that is a great question. So I graduated with my PhD in civil infrastructure systems from Virginia Tech. I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? So I
Okay.
remember, I think I was visiting my sister up in New Jersey, and I kind of sat down and kind of plotted out this plan. It was okay, I'm going to go work in the private sector for 3 to 5 years. Then I'm going to go work in the public sector for 3 to 5 years. Then I'm going to work for 3 to 5 years looking at these same issues at a national level. And then
Okay.
after that, I'm going to go back to university and teach and or start a consulting firm. That was my grand plan
Wow.
from, when I finished.
Wow.
Now, I was really fortunate to get a job in the highway maintenance area working in the private sector. So I was managing
Okay.
maintenance on roadways and bridges, managing work crews, managing paving jobs. It was a really good experience for me to be in the field. And I really requested to be in the field because if you're going to be leading people, it's good to understand what life is like from their point of
Correct.
view.
Yep.
And so I can remember going out to help the crews dig ditches
Man.
and to clean out ditches and
Yep.
to go clean out pipes and, going under bridges and looking at snakes and all of this other stuff that's
Man.
there. Now, coming up in Philly, I ain't seen none of that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. For real.
So all that was like new to me, but
Man.
that's what I signed up for. I really enjoyed that. So I did that for about 3 years, a little over 3 years. And then I got married and moved to Richmond, Virginia, and took a job working for the Virginia Department of Transportation. And I was fortunate enough to start managing or building a research program that was in the same area of interest in highway
Okay.
maintenance and infrastructure rehabilitation that of the experience that I had in the private sector. So, okay, so now you got check one,
Yeah. Public.
private sector three to
Yep.
5 years, check two,
Yeah.
public sector for 3 to 5 years. And so there was a lull in one of the contracts that we were doing statewide because when I was working for VDOT, I was in charge of all of the maintenance contracts. So
Okay.
VDOT has
Man.
9 districts. So the 9 districts would come to our unit and we would come up with all
Okay.
specialty contracts. Anything that dealt with maintenance, my unit was responsible for.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed that aspect of serving those 9 districts, with our team and our staff. But there was a lull.
Wow.
And I went to a presentation and somebody came and gave a presentation and was talking about, actually it was Dr. Ann Brock. She came and gave a presentation and was talking about the Transportation Research Board, which is part of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, and how they were looking for someone to lead this applied research program on infrastructure renewal. I was, okay,
Man, this is
3 to 5 years.
it.
And yeah, I was like, this is it. This
Yeah.
is it. So I applied, put in an application. And the day that I found out that they wanted to hire me,
Wow.
I came home early and
Okay.
my wife was home early that day too. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to be able to tell her what's going on. And she was like, oh, I have some news for you. And I was like, oh, I have some news for you too. And she says, you're going to be a dad. And I was like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. And I got offered that job in Washington, D.C. Now, for those of you that don't know, Richmond, Virginia is about maybe 110
So like
miles
2
south.
hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in traffic, it's
Yeah.
2.5. It's a 2.5 hour commute.
Yeah.
And so my wife is kind of looking at me and like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So when are you going to tell them that you're not going to take it? And
Oh, man.
for me, again,
Yeah.
guys, this is the next thing on the list.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Mm.
I think I'm going to take it. And I'm gonna tell you, so Raphael, she said something that you never want to hear. And that is she looked at me and she says, you must not love me or your unborn child.
Wow.
Because if
Yep.
you take that job, you're not going to have any time for us. And you would think that would be enough. But hey,
Yeah.
I'm 30 something. I'm thinking like, this is the next thing on my list. I'm going to go ahead and take the job.
Yep.
So I take the job. I'm getting up at old dark 30, going up to Washington, D.C., and I'm working,
Man.
doing well, coming home at old dark at night,
Wow.
get a little bit of chance to see my wife,
Yeah.
during the pregnancy. We have our first child. He came 5 weeks early. So it was a
Okay.
little early, but he was healthy. Everything
Okay.
was fine.
Great.
And my wife decided that she was going to stay home with him for a year. So you can imagine, right, as a man, really conditioned to be the provider, what's going through my mind, which is now I got to double down. I got to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do
Yeah.
at my job. And so that's what I did. Put my nose to the grind. I was doing very well, at work, different accolades, running research projects. It was great traveling around the world. I got the opportunity to go to Paris, to China, to Korea, to Spain, all of these different places, looking at some of the things that they were doing. So listen, in terms of work, I was killing it.
Yeah.
Home, was horrible.
Ah,
It was
got
horrible
you.
because I wasn't there for my wife. I wasn't able to be that emotional support that she needed. And so we got pregnant with our second child, and the doctors put her on bed rest. And so that's when things started to shift, but not totally. I still was okay. All right, I'll work from home. I'll be here when I can. Part of me resented that because again, this is the next thing on my list.
Yeah.
I'm in the ladder.
And it's
Then
a dream
my
to be
youngest
realistic.
son, yeah, yeah, it is a
Yeah.
dream. It is a dream, and I'm
Yeah.
pursuing the dream.
Yeah.
And there are times where life continues to kind of talk to you and continues to suggest changes.
Mhm.
And life was suggesting changes for me, but I was ignoring those changes.
Okay.
And my youngest son was born at 26 weeks in a day.
Oh,
He
wow.
was one
Have
pound,
wow.
14 ounces.
Yep.
1 pound, 14 ounces. My wedding ring could literally fit around his thigh.
Wow.
Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, man.
And so I had a 1 year old at home. I had a wife who was feeling neglected because I wasn't there in terms of emotional support. I had a newborn who's in the NICU, and you can imagine with all of the travel in the daily commute that my health was shot too.
Yep.
It wasn't like I was making time to go to the gym and eat and do the stuff that I want to do. And so I can remember, and I'm bringing this home. I can remember just sitting there and asking myself what I call the three questions that changed my life. And those three questions are this, you know, do you want to win at work? Yes, I do. I want to win
Mhm.
at work. I was killing it.
Yeah.
Like it was cool. I'm building a career. Do you want to win at home? Yeah, I do. I do want to win at home. I don't know anybody that doesn't want to win at home, however you define winning.
Yeah.
But the last question was the one that shook me to the core. And it's the simplest one, but the hardest to answer when you're honest with yourself. And that's simply, are you? Are you winning at work and home?
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, I could not say yes. And because I couldn't say yes, that was the changing point for me to start designing and living a life where I could answer that yes.
Wow.
Got you.
So quick follow up to that then. I mean, because it's like a story that I'm now curious to know the end. What happened to your job? I mean, in order to transition into that life, because
Mhm.
obviously you've answered the questions, which is this is what shaped who you are in your career and your
Yeah.
life today. But did you quit the job?
I was prepared to.
Okay.
And what happened is they allowed me to work offsite.
Okay.
Say, oh, we having some space issues and we were looking to create some space. Your wife's on bed rest. You got these other issues going on. Go ahead, work offsite.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be temporary. From that temporary position, I viewed working offsite as a privilege and not a right.
Okay.
So that means that
Right.
if I had to work extra, if I had to go to DC, I went.
Yeah.
I did everything that I needed to do to make sure I was delivering quality service at my job. And because I was willing to do that, they allowed me to stay out. This is way before COVID. I
Okay.
was working remotely for many years
Okay.
and was one of the only people within the organization that was working remotely. And so, did it have an impact on my career trajectory? Yes, it did. There were times where I was offered promotions, but told that in order for me to get the promotion that I
Yeah.
needed to come
Come back.
back up
Wow.
to DC every day.
Yeah.
And I said, no thanks, because that's not the life that I want to live. And I remember one of my supervisors at the time was like, well, what happened to you? You used to be so ambitious. And I was like, I'm still ambitious. It's just that the object of my ambition has changed. The
Y-
object of my ambition is no longer simply how can I climb the ladder of career.
Yeah.
The object of my ambition is how can I design and live a life where I'm winning at work and at home. We talk about creating win solutions when it comes to negotiation.
Yeah.
We don't often apply that when it comes to our personal life and our professional life.
Of course.
finding a way to create a win.
Exactly.
Wow. I mean, that's
My bad,
interesting,
sis.
but I mean, it's no, it's cool because I guess that's. I mean, my question is that when now or trying to create the life that you want, is that when you transition? Because I mean, I'm maybe I'm fast forwarding a bit, but I'm curious to then know because I think in all that you've explained, you're basically talking about 15 plus years of a
Yep.
lot of experience in engineering, in the field of engineering, but also in, I guess, what you would call experience. I mean, not just like the profession, but work experience, life
Yeah.
experience, because now you're
Yes.
going through a lot of having to navigate the politics of work. You're having to navigate perfecting a skill set, and then you're having to navigate life, which is
Yes.
the biggest part of it. Is that what prompted you to kind of start your business, which
Yes.
then goes into executive coaching? Because this is a different level of coaching. You're not just, hey, I'm talking to someone who's trying to figure out the start of life. Like, how did that, is that the transition?
I think that was the starting point,
Okay.
an inflection point
Okay.
where the trajectory of my life started to change. Because as I started to look for personal development resources, as I started to develop
Oh,
myself, it started to open me up to a whole new world of the role that coaching can play in personal development.
okay.
And so then, I got certified as part of the John Maxwell Leadership as a certified speaker, trainer, and coach. And so I'm doing that. I got some other life coach certification and just training and thinking through, okay, how can I apply these principles to my life? But I was already winning at work and at home by the time I started that journey. I
Okay.
think the fact that I was able to create that life and have that the life where I was successful at work and I was being present here for my family, that allowed me the freedom to explore some of those other issues, the freedom to start to really grow my mind and explore things that I may not have explored before.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Makes
You
sense.
know, I mean, this is
Okay.
just like this. I feel like this topic that you just broke down to us is a major symptom of a family man that's aiming to build a brand. It's a major symptom where he lacks commitment, or he lacks commitment to going forward with the journey, man. Because you got to think about it, Dr. Brian, is that at this point in time, you had built this dream up for so many different years. You've done crazy hard work. You're achieving the dream. Phase one of the dream, 3 to 5 years locked in. We're on to phase two, things of that sort. And you get this dead halt. And a lot of people can't stomach that. A lot of people can't, at that very moment, ask those three questions and revert themselves and say, you know what? Nah, let me adjust things across the spectrum. A lot of people would have taken that promotion. The bag matters, Dr. Bryant, and they
Oh,
probably wouldn't have
listen, the bag. I'm not saying that the bag don't matter, but what I found is that you're still able to get the bag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're going to get the
yeah,
bag. You might not get it as fast, but and the big difference is that once you get the bag, you'll be able to keep it,
yeah,
and you'll
Yeah.
be able to keep building off of it.
gotcha. Is that so?
So
Okay,
yeah, the bag matters. I'm not.
yeah, of course. Well, okay,
Go
so
ahead. Now, what were you going to say?
segueing into this, then, if that's the case, is that as a part of your executive coaching, is that a premise of it? Hey, maintaining the bag, but you still, give us like a brief overview of what that executive coaching is based on your experiences that you went.
Yeah, how do you help people? Because I mean, to add to what Ralph has said, you said something very important. You had found success in, 'cause I wouldn't use the word balance, but you had found success in figuring out how to make work life work and family
Yeah,
life work.
both
So
happy.
you
Yeah.
said, okay, I'm not coming from a perspective of I'm experimenting. I'm showing you what I had to go through
Yeah,
and have
Yes.
then figured out. So how does that executive coaching work for people who are thinking about? Because I was telling Ralph that a friend of mine is a CEO of plastics. It's like some chemical plastics
Hmm.
company. And he used to see me post on LinkedIn about coaching and all
Hmm.
the stuff in my experience with my coaches, stuff like that. And he's like, I've never talked about it, but in order for me to become CEO, my company then said to me that then hired coaches for me to teach me to how to be a CEO, how to be in the room with CEOs,
wow.
how to talk
Hmm.
to them, how to
Yeah.
negotiate with them. And I was like, wow, this is quite interesting. So, I mean, and that's exactly what you're preparing people for to become, I mean, executive coaching is saying, okay, well, tell us what it is.
Yeah,
'Cause
you
I
tell
don't
us.
want to make the
Exactly,
assumption
you
for the
tell
people
us.
to make it seem like I know exactly what he does, but you tell us what it is.
Yeah.
No, I think you are absolutely right. You're preparing people to take that next step, or you're providing services to people who need support in that role.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I tend to handle with clients, that are in those two spaces. But in general, I have a 4-step approach that I apply when it comes to work-life balance or when it comes to winning at work and at home.
Okay.
And that is really determine, what really matters to you and focus on what matters most. And so we go through a process of really uncovering what really matters to you. It can be as simple as, what do you say are the top 5 things for you? What really matters to you? People might say family, my faith, my job, my health, my relationships. So, okay, great. So those are the 5 things. Now, what I want to do is look at your calendar and see how you're actually allocating your most precious resource because you can't get time back.
Okay.
We start looking at the calendar and how people allocate their time.
Wow.
You see, work's very important,
Yeah.
but the other things kind of fall out or they're sporadic. And so then it's okay. You said this is important. I'm looking at how you use your time. It's not showing up. So you have a choice. You can change what you say is important, or you can begin to make time for those things that matter most for you. And a lot of times people want to make that transition and they say, I don't know how. No, I just don't know
Okay.
how. Okay, wonderful. The first thing I want you to do, then we move to the next step. And I call this process the engineer's blueprint for success. We
Okay.
move to the next step, which is really visualizing what life is going to look like if you are able to allocate the time that you want to invest in those things that matter most to you. So you start going through this process. I want to see yourself doing the thing. I want you to see yourself overcoming whatever those challenges are that are in your way so that you can really get a vision, a crystal clear picture of what life's going to look like then. And we will work and work until we have that picture. The next step is developing a plan. Okay. So you've determined what matters. You can see where you want to go. Now you're like, well, how do I close the gap? How do I get from here to there?
Mhm.
That's what developing the plan is. And so we will break down a step-by-step process that will help you get to where you want to go, looking at your habits, looking at all of the daily activities, your mindset, whether we're talking about meditation, affirmations, or project management type software or tools that's really dictating how you're moving forward. A lot of it depends on the preferences of the client and how they're actually in their makeup.
Okay.
And the last step is as equally important because in reality, without the last step, nothing happens, and that's execution. And part of it is providing that support
Yeah.
for that executive, helping them to execute. If they come up with a block, helping them work through that block in terms of, okay, why was this an issue? Has this been an issue in the past? Let's work through this and let's really understand how you can move forward. I close my podcast, the Engineer Your Success podcast, almost every time with this statement. And that's many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it. And there's a select group of people that actually follow through and do it. And it is my vision and dream for you to be part of that select few. And that's really the intent of the Engineer's Blueprint for Success, to help people become part of that select few who are able to design and live a life where they're winning at work and at home.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where I've been asking myself that question a lot about like coaching because and it's funny, as I was asking that question, I read something where this lady said she had to shut down her coaching business where kind of had to go back, and she was into real estate. She kind of had to go back into executing on doing what she did to be able to help clients, because ultimately she was making money as a coach, but her clients were failing miserably. And I think I see, I'm not going to say I see a lot of that because I don't know what happened in the back end of a lot of people who says I'm a coach and this and that. But you
Yeah.
mentioned something about your goal is to make the people become that 1%er of
Yes.
the crop. And
Yes.
I think that's what it is, because explaining it to us just now sounded like, okay, we're going to go through a journey of saying we're not going to quit until we figure it out versus, hey, here's the blueprint. I've given you everything you need. That's my job. My job is done. It's like a teacher saying, hey,
Yeah,
you've come to class. Here's the curriculum. I'm going to teach for 16 weeks. You're going to go home and study. And finals, you're going to take this test. If you pass, hey, if you don't pass, not my problem. I got another 16 weeks
Right.
of another bunch of students coming in. So I think I like that, broke that down and explained that, hey, this is a process that we're going to use to make
Like
you
a framework.
succeed. And exactly, but
Yep.
it's a framework we're going to actually implement, because
Yeah.
implementation, I think, is the most difficult part of
Exactly.
any process. Like you said, the execution, which is the most important part. So do you find that you get people who get this block? And if they do, in terms of execution, because I think I've had that, but do people get
Same.
that block? And if they do, how do you help them unlock that
Yeah.
blocked into execution? Because that's what really matters.
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it is creating an environment where of safety, where
Okay.
that individual, my client, really feels safe to be able to discuss the issues that they're facing. Right. So, one, safety. Two, lack of judgment. Remove any judgment from the conversation. As a coach, it is not my
Okay.
job to judge you.
Yeah.
It is my job to be there to sit with you in that moment. It's my job to challenge you and to challenge your assumptions through questions and through other means. But that part of it is no judgment, being present, but approaching it from a position of curiosity. So really being curious and asking the questions as to, oh wow, so why do you think that was? Why do you think this came up? A few weeks ago when we talked about this is how you felt and this is where you were. So, really digging into what's going on. Sometimes it can be limiting beliefs because what happens is that people will say they can't do something
Mhm.
and you start asking, well, why can't you do that? Well, I can't do it because of this. Oh, okay. Well, seems like a few weeks ago you did. I'll give you an example. So I was talking to someone and they said, I really have a hard time doing things for myself. That's why I'm not able to make these investments, to grow because I don't do things for myself. I was like, okay, well, did you go get that pair of shoes from that other spot? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like them. Okay. Was that for you or for somebody else? Oh, yeah, that was for me. What about that watch that you bought? Was that for you or was that for somebody else? Oh, no, that was for me. So the issue is not that you have a problem investing in yourself
Yeah.
because you do. You're making these purchases, but let's start to break down why are you willing to spend it on things
Hmm.
that you like but unwilling to spend it on these things that are going to be beneficial to you, but may be uncomfortable for you right now.
Right.
Mm. Wow. So that's getting people to step out of their comfort zone and making and prioritizing the same action differently. If
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yes.
And and Dr. Brian, would you say that's your number one characteristic that leads to success as a coach? Would you say that one aspect of getting these
I think
people?
my, yeah, my number one characteristic to being a successful coach is being curious and
Okay.
Okay.
approaching situations from a position of curiosity
Okay.
and not trying to put people in a predefined.
Got
So
it.
one of my strengths is individualization. So even within the engineer's blueprint for success, my framework, there's going to be individualization within that framework to suit the needs of my client. So I don't believe in cookie cutter approaches where
Yeah.
everybody's going to do these same 15 things. And when you get done with these same 15 things, you'll be complete
Yeah.
or, through the process. No,
It's a
no.
customized
Now,
process.
those 15 things may be similar, they're not going to be exactly the same
Right.
because everybody's a little bit different and everybody approaches things a little bit differently.
Makes sense.
Okay. Now, I guess as you've gone into the coaching and you've designed, I would say at this point, you've designed the life that you want.
Mhm.
How, now that the transition is completely made, because I mean, at first we got this picture of you the challenges, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has that affected your family now? And what's it like? I mean, basically we're peeking right now into like now in the future or even the now, because at first he was like, okay, we heard all the struggles and the challenges of that. What is it like now that you've got this life by design and now you're
Yeah.
living it?
Yeah. Great question. I would say I've been living life by design probably for a good 10,
Okay.
12 years
Oh, wow.
before I started even
Hold on.
doing my entrepreneurial stuff. And that was really, and the key to that is placing boundaries around what really matters to you and being respectful when you defend those boundaries. And
Okay.
so if they want you to do something different that's outside of it, that's totally their right to ask you to do things. It's not their boundary, it's yours.
Uh,
And it is totally your right to defend that boundary in a respectful way and say, no, can we find a different solution to get you what you want? Because this is important to me. And I want to continue to work here. I want to continue to do the things that need to be done. But can we find a way? And
uh,
so, even in my situation where I was offered the promotion and told that I needed to come up to DC every day, and I declined, 3 months later, they gave me the promotion and I
right.
still didn't have to come to DC every
Uh-huh.
day.
Okay.
But part of that was because of how I approached it, which is I'm not trying to be confrontational, just really standing up for what's really important to me. And they understood the value of having an employee that was happy and settled and continuing to produce.
Got it. Got it. No, man. Well,
I like
well,
that. I
yeah,
mean,
I love it. Go ahead, Cecil.
the reason I'm saying I like that is because I'm looking back into, I mean, Ralph knows this is my last job. And I'm
Mhm.
saying to myself, like, maybe I should have approached it that way and things would have been a lot more differently in terms of like boundaries. Because I think in a negotiation, ask for things, but asking doesn't give anyone the right to give it to you, or
Right.
it's not your right. I mean, you work for an
Correct.
employer, they're not asked for something. So you kind of have to know, like, okay, I'm going into this battle, this negotiation. What am I willing to give up? What am I willing to do to earn the right to get that? So as you were saying that, I was thinking about that, and I'm like, maybe was I too confrontational? But I mean, I might never get that opportunity, but at least I get to hear this and learn for the future. And I hope the audience gets to really take that deeply into thought, moving into the negotiations they want to have for the things that they want to pursue in their lives.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that we can make in those situations is getting upset and offended by what our employers may ask of us, right? It's okay for them to ask
Yeah,
and it's okay for you to decline,
yeah,
but you don't have to get mad about it.
correct.
And part of it is really understanding that you want to respond and not react. When I react, it's a knee jerk thing. It's the first thing that comes to, my mind. Boom. When I respond, I'm thinking about the impact that I want to have or the response
Yeah.
that I want, as a result of what I'm about to say. And that's totally different.
Now,
Makes
I could
sense.
totally relate, man, because Dr. Brian, I had to learn this on the go. I feel like I had my own School of Hard Knocks MBA, especially as I became a Subway franchisee, because I had to learn that I had to retain employees. I had to approach behavioral issues. I had to approach attendant issues. I had to approach all these things. And remember, as me being that executive, I had to approach this staff a certain way in order to get my result. Okay. Yes,
Yep.
I did keep their situation in mind and as a factor, but
Hmm.
overall, I had to make sure to get the desired result, for the overall
Yes.
team. So I had to learn how to keep my emotions in check. I had to learn not to just, just speak with my heart and not with my mind. I had to actually sit down with myself and give myself a couple of minutes, devise a game plan, knowing that if I said this, they're going to react this way. But then when I come back this way, we'll get the result. And I will go in, execute,
Yep.
and get that result. But, Dr. Bryant, the audience listening to this, we may be tackling two different perspectives. We may be tackling the ones that aim to create an executive coaching program such as yours, and we're also
Yeah.
tackling that executive that needs to get coached to become the CEO or to promote higher within this company. So I want to get into the foundation of what you built. You know, what is your organizational structure for that one person that's coming and saying, "Yo, man, I've never heard of a executive coaching person. I want to, kind of implement and execute on this." What does your organizational structure look like?
At this point, it's really simple. I'm
Okay.
a solopreneur
Nice.
and
Yes.
I am the chief everything officer
Okay.
other than the folks that I, may use to execute certain functions within the
Okay.
business. But in terms of the client facing part of the business, what you see is what you get.
Okay.
And I take it you
Cool.
have a CRM that breaks down and can handle these, or is it even necessary? Okay.
It is necessary
Okay.
because in addition to coaching individuals, I provide coaching services and leadership development services for companies and organizations.
Okay.
And so it's crucial to be able to keep track of whom you're
Yeah.
talking to and kind of who to follow up with, and then thinking about the different packages that you would have to offer. There's the consulting, leadership development, kind of the platinum package that
Okay.
may be with some of my small business clients that are in the engineering area. And then there are packages that I have available for individual engineers because
Okay.
those look
Yeah.
totally different just because of the scope of services that I'm providing.
Okay. And to add to that, and this is maybe something I know, or Ralph and I would know that maybe the audience doesn't know, but I mentioned it earlier that you do have a podcast. So, and considering we are all podcasters, and most recently, our last
Right.
interview was a podcast coach. Now,
Mhm.
and this is maybe us putting it out there for the importance of it. What role does your podcast play in all this? I mean, I would like to hear because I don't know. I could make an assumption and give all the answers, but I could be wrong. So, what role does your podcast play in all this for you?
For me, the podcast is a top of funnel activity.
Okay.
The
Okay.
podcast is a place where I am able to show up as a subject matter expert and be presented as an authority in the field. So I've been podcasting for over 2 years. I think
Okay.
episode 108 will be coming out next week. So we've been
Congrats.
2 years of weekly
Kudos.
episodes. And I do, thank you. I do a mix of interview based episodes and solo episodes. The majority of the episodes this year have been solo episodes, but the whole thing is about brand position. The podcast for me has been a way for me to position the brand of Dr. James Bryant,
Okay.
the
Okay.
brand of
Got it.
Engineer Your Success. And from that flows a lot of the social media content that I put out is based on what we talk about in the podcast.
Okay.
From that social media content, you get other leads and other people that are commenting on posts or that are reaching out when they're ready to, take advantage of the service. And I think this is for the people that are out there that are thinking about building their brand. Don't
Mhm.
be afraid to niche down. Do not be afraid to niche down. There's some people who are like, oh no, if you
Yep.
niche down, you're going to miss this
Like that.
whole market of people over there. No, those people weren't for you, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't going to come to you in the first place.
Yeah.
You need to niche down to the people that you're uniquely designed to speak to. Because when you are talking or somebody is talking about what you do and who you are, it's like being in a crowded room where you have cocktails and you have all of the glasses and stuff that are, think about that noise and somebody's talking about it. And that person is going to turn and say, I think I need to hear more of that because you're speaking
Yeah.
directly
Got you.
to that person. So for me, initially when I started, I was going to do life coaching. I was going to, people would be like, who's your target
Okay.
market?
Got it.
I can help everybody. Well,
Okay.
in trying to help everyone, no one was able to hear me because my message wasn't refined enough. I would talk generally work life balance or this kinds of issues or these kinds of issues. It wasn't refined enough. And around the time that I started the podcast is when I made the decision to niche down to
Okay.
engineers, business owners with an engineering background, engineer. We're going to engineer your success.
Yep.
And that has been
Very
just a
smart.
great experience for me niching down because I have clients that are not engineers. I have people that listen to the podcast that are on the email list that are not engineers. And they will say, I'm not an engineer, but I receive value from this. And
Okay.
so the people that are outside of your target that are designed to hear you will still hear you
Yep.
when
Got it.
you have that message refined.
Makes
Got it.
sense. I mean,
And to
people out there.
piggyback, so really quick, to piggyback off of that, does the podcast draw you in your corporate clients, the platinum level clients that are
Yes,
okay?
it
Wow.
does.
Wow.
It does. The podcast draws those in.
Yeah.
The podcast helps to provide just a certain air about the brand, and then I'm able to say, "Hey, why don't you go listen to this episode where I
Yeah.
talked
Okay.
about the importance of delegation, or where I talked about, the 7 tips that engineers can use to be better communicators." It's all about the topics, choosing the topics that are catered to the market that you're serving and are catered to the avatar that you're actually serving.
Makes sense. And the reason I asked these, or just even wanted you to touch on that, is because I think it's the importance of it ties everything together. Now, if you go through the journey of you saying it takes hard work, but it's not only hard work. And now you come and it takes hard work, but from looking at everything, it takes hard work, it takes skills. I mean, you perfected a
Mhm.
skill of being a civil engineer or just understanding the skill of engineering. You got the experience, leadership experience, executive experience, and then it went into coaching. And for the last 2 years, you've been putting out all this information now, specifically talking to a specific person, if you will, in that avatar, and
Mhm.
saying, "Hey, this is who I'm talking to." And to have 108 episodes in,
Man.
now, if somebody wants to know about you, it's very easy
Very
to
easy.
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, they're not, they don't even, I mean, because they don't even need to go to a website and say, because I could make a website tell you what I wanted to tell you, but for you to have 100 and eight episodes telling people what you want them to hear versus what they need to hear, like that's a different story. You're telling them what they need to hear and the information you've had from experience. So it ties everything in for the audience listening, that the importance of building a brand. I mean, I think Dr.
Yeah.
Bryant has built a brand, but that brand has been built from experience, from hard work, and he's put everything together now, and he's using his platform, the platform, obviously the podcast, social media, and all that stuff to get the information out there. And there is no shortcut to what he just explained. I mean, we just did it in an hour, but there is, this is like taking 20 years plus and putting it in an hour and saying, "Hey, this is how you do it." But I hope people get to understand that these things do take time, and you're a testament to that, because just being a PhD, I always, to get there in itself is, it's not an easy feat for anyone at all, but you made it sound so easy. So kudos to you for that, man.
Exactly,
Kudos
Thank
to
you,
man.
you.
Cecil.
Yeah, definitely, doctor. For me, you really broke down how this coaching can definitely help someone get out of that shell and achieve their level, or I would say maybe even it has to be their level if they're coming to you for coaching, but achieve that higher level of operating
Mhm.
within private or public sector, or whatever it is, man. So,
Yes.
and the fact that the corporate clients come in based off the podcast as well, too, man. I can only imagine what this next year of episodes are going to draw in, just because now that's a massive base. So we'll probably get into that on another episode, right? Teacher moment and things of that
Yeah,
sort. But
yeah, it opens up a lot of different opportunities for me. It's opening
of
up
course,
tons of opportunities.
That's what's up.
and
And again, I've been podcasting for 2 years. So if you listen to episode 1, it
okay,
sounds totally different than
yeah,
if you listen to episode
it's same here, man.
108, right?
It's
I'm
same here,
totally
man.
different, but that consistency, that was one of the
Yep,
other things we were
Hmm.
talking about before that I wanted to mention. Consistency plays a role.
correct,
Yes.
Showing up consistently
correct.
plays a role in shaping your brand.
It
So
does.
you want people to know what to expect when they do work with you, when they do business with you. You have to be consistent.
Of
Yeah. I
course.
mean, because I think it's only through consistency, because some people are going to, like you said, something, people would look at you now, or from one,
Yeah,
and they wouldn't buy you until maybe episode
yeah,
95,
yeah,
because
yeah.
they needed to know that when they go
Correct.
into a relationship with you, there's consistency in it, versus if they'd probably gone in at episode 10 and then you disappear on them and they're like, okay, like I know he's good at doing what he does, but what about the person who was just waiting? So I think
Yeah.
consistency plays a
Oh yeah,
huge
definitely.
role in that. And I mean, to say all that, I guess the next thing would be, do you have any upcoming projects that you would like people to know about? Because I mean, we're talking about all this and someone saying, well, how do I find out Brian? Like, I need to know,
Exactly.
like where, like, oh,
The easiest way to find my website
mhm.
Okay.
is winatworkandhome.com.
Okay.
Winatworkandhome.com, because that's what I help people do.
Okay.
Help people win at work
Yeah.
and at home.
Okay.
That's
When
the
at
easiest way.
work@home.com.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. If you
Okay.
type engineer success on Google, I'll be be either the first or the second thing that pops up.
That's what's
No.
SEO. So
I know,
and
man. I was
that
about to say,
speaks to
yeah.
the niche. So for
Yeah.
everybody out there,
Niche
that
down.
speaks to him niching down, because if
Yeah.
he didn't, then I mean, I don't know what he would have said to make it that, but then
Mhm.
you would have been typing executive coaching, find like a million people. So he had to
Yep.
niche down, and now he's tricked the algorithm, the SEO, to just be like, hey, I'm right there. I'm one of the few people. Well, there could be other people doing it, but they haven't figured out yet how to talk to their audience. So they're not
Exactly.
getting number one or two, and they're not paying to be number one or two like some companies would have to pay. So these are all parts of branding that really help people with
And it
that.
goes back to being consistent. When you have
Yeah,
2 years worth of
Yeah.
content
Yeah.
exactly. It's
out
indexed.
there on Apple Podcasts and
Yeah.
other places, it shows up. It pays off.
Definitely.
It pays off.
Definitely.
A question, Doc, before I transition back to Cecil, again, for that audience member that's aiming to become that executive coach, or I know we talked about niching down and things of that sort. What exactly would you say? What exactly would you say is something that they need to stomach from the very beginning, wanting to enter this lane? I'm sure pitfalls. I'm sure there's example for like what Cecil said at episode 10. If you didn't have the consistency, you would have gotten over on some people, things of that sort. What mindset do these people need to have to say, you know what, I want to tackle executive coaching? What mindset do they need to have before they even take on that feat?
Yeah, I think if you want to go into a field and you want to be an executive coach and you want to be a consultant, whatever one of those lanes you want to be, you have to know what problem you solve and who you solve it for. Right. So you can have skills as a coach, you can have skills as a facilitator, but when you start marketing and messaging and really building your brand, it's important for you to know the problem that you solve and who you're solving it for. It took me a long time to narrow that down. Even after I niched down to engineering, people would say, so you're a work-life balance engineer, and are you going to
Okay.
do stuff with work-life balance? And I would talk about work-life balance, and people would look at me like I'm talking, with a whole out of a different part of my head, because nobody ever thinks that they really need work-life balance. Like, they recognize it as something there. They'll say, oh, it's elusive, it doesn't matter, it's a mirage because things are never balanced. That just means they don't want to do the hard work, right? Because even if you think about walking, would you say that you're a balanced walker? Yeah, when you
Right.
think about being off balance is when you're about to fall. But
Yeah.
the whole time you're walking, it's a thing of balance and rebalance, center and recenter,
Yeah.
as you are continuing to move forward. As you're continuing to move forward. So the way that I approached it is I started thinking through, okay, what were those 3 questions that I asked myself? Okay, do I want to win at work? Yes. Do I want to win at home? Yes. Am I? That is how I approach work-life balance, is really trying to determine or identify the areas where you may not be winning. And now let's shore up that area.
And one last question, my bad, Cecil. One last, because I want to
You're
make
good.
sure
Go
that
ahead,
people
bro.
can
I
get this
mean,
right. Nigga, this is interesting, Doctor. And from the outside looking in, I would want to get as many gems as possible. Your John Maxwell leadership, your actual certified, or you went through the John
Yeah.
Maxwell leadership program. Would you suggest that anyone aiming to go into executive coaching goes through that? And what's the raw benefit of having that? Is it a accolade behind you that, obviously gives you notoriety to your clients, or what exactly is the main benefit for someone aiming to go into it?
Okay, I'll approach this from a couple different angles.
Okay.
One is, most times that kind of program, a certification program, is not for your clients, it's for you.
Okay.
And it's to provide you the confidence and the tools that you need to confidently show up in the marketplace.
Okay.
So a lot of people will say, oh, I need to get certified. Now, they do provide examples and example contracts, and hey, this is how you build your business. And to some degree, it's kind of drinking water out of a fire hose, because it's a lot of
Okay.
information.
Okay.
But the reality is, a lot of it is to help you build your confidence so that you can show up in the marketplace confident.
Right.
The John Maxwell team is great. They have lots of resources. They have calls that are going on every night of the week to
Wow.
help you build your business. I would say anybody looking into it, absolutely, it's something
Okay.
to consider. But any kind of coaching or certification program is really more for you and not your clients.
Okay.
So you can think about having all of this stuff on your website, you
Okay.
know, it looks great.
Got it.
But if you can identify the problem that you solve and for whom you solve it for, the certification doesn't matter.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
And
Got
what
it.
most of the certifications do is they train you on the process of coaching, not so much on the process of building your business.
Okay. Okay. Makes
I
sense.
mean, but
Perfect.
it's interesting. It's for you, but it is for you to help others.
Yeah,
Better.
but what I'm saying is that the benefit is more so for
For
your
you.
confidence, for
Okay.
you to show up,
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
because a lot of people may have some of the intuitive skills,
Mhm.
but they're not showing up confidently because they're like, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. And I'm not talking bad about the certifications. I think they're great. So,
Okay.
I've done John Maxwell team certification. I've done the Business Made Simple business coach certification.
Okay.
Also I'm now in the John Maxwell mentorship program.
Okay.
So there's nothing bad about it. It's just more so that these things
Got you.
are to help provide you confidence.
Got
Okay.
it.
I mean, which is
Got it.
important because,
So you can better serve.
for instance, I
Mhm.
went through coaching, and like I said, with Jerome, and it's what gave me the confidence to start the podcast. Because initially, when he said podcast, I'm like, "You want me to actually take a mic and start talking to people? Like, what am I going to talk about?" And he's like, "I mean, we talk." So he's like, "Well, we talk about it for an hour every week. Like, there's a lot for you to talk about." But I had to be coached, build the confidence to understand
Yep.
why it was important for me to show up and had the information. So I think, I guess it makes sense in that way where you say it's for you, and then obviously you're able to show up then for others. Makes
Yes.
makes sense. That's
Yeah.
cool. So before we end all of this, I think you are the perfect person based on even your bio and what you're about and what you do to answer these questions for the audience to get a quick glimpse into the life of I would say, an entrepreneur, an executive coach, and a husband and a father. So quick, the first one goes is you made a new entrepreneur. What is the first piece of advice you give?
Are they married or unmarried? I
I'll
need to
get to
know.
that one, but I'll get to that one, but
Yeah,
I'll
true.
get to that one, but that's the intrigue about this one. You just meet a new entrepreneur without knowing anything about, I mean, maybe you have a 5-minute
Okay.
conversation with them.
Yeah, but I
So,
don't know anything about it. It's really nailing down the problem that you solve and who you're solving for.
okay, I
That's
like
the
that.
big thing
Okay.
because
Okay.
everything else is going to build off of that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Now, second one is the- we talked about CRM and stuff. What is a digital resource that helps you greatly?
Chat GPT.
Ah, I like it. I mean, I like that.
Love it.
Now, to your the question you asked me is what advice would you then give to a new father and a husband?
Yeah, there you go.
A new father and a husband communicate and understand that your spouse cannot read your mind.
Okay.
There are a lot of times where we think that we're communicating and we're not communicating clearly. And it's really incumbent on the person that's communicating to be able to package the information in a way that the person I'm giving communication to can receive it.
Okay.
And, for me, I learned that like the first 3 years of marriage, even though I screwed up with taking the job in that first 3 years of marriage, I learned how, if you think through this whole process, I learned how to be a much better communicator.
Yeah,
Okay,
man.
cool. Thank you very much, man.
Perfect,
Appreciate
man.
it. I mean, I think these answers, as much as I think they help the audience, they help me, especially that last one, because maybe communication, especially in a marriage, is still something I struggle with. And these people saying it over, and I think most, Ralph, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, most people have actually said communicate. So it's like
Yeah.
this reminder you get all the time, and you're like, okay, I got to figure this out, how to
Yeah.
communicate with it. Because like you're right, my wife cannot read my mind. Because sometimes I ask the question in my mind, and I'm like, well, she didn't hear you, so you actually have to verbalize it for her to
Right.
know what you're thinking and what you're saying to make things happen. But so I really
And the other piece to that is that we're going through all this rationale in our mind and our thinking, right? So all of this stuff is happening in the background, and we say one thing, and we expect for our spouses to have all of that rationale that we have been
Yeah.
thinking to understand why we said that one thing.
Okay.
And it doesn't happen that way. You have to be able to take that and communicate. Maybe you don't dump it all out,
Yeah.
but you have to figure out a way to frame it so that you're framing that issue so y'all can have a discussion and make a decision. So
Makes sense.
when it
Yeah.
came time for me to launch my company and really kind of say I'm going to go out on my own, those were the conversations that we were having. Okay, how are we going to structure this? Okay, this is what I want to do. All right, how much money do we need to have set aside before you're comfortable with us doing this? Here are the trigger points that we're going to have that if things get here,
Yeah.
then maybe I'll do this. If things go here, I'll do that. Thankfully, I haven't had to do any of that because things have been going very well for us
Okay.
and well for my business. But we had
But
those
you had that
discussions
contingency plan.
up front. Mhm.
I feel like this last section is like what when someone says pro tip, like that's exactly what that is. So
Yeah, definitely. I think this whole episode really gave some real in-depth insight on the raw realities of a family man. In this case, chasing his dream, his profession, and then eventually building that brand, man. A lot of people get caught right at that pivot point of, man, wife drawing me back, baby on the way, all these things happening at home, but I want to chase this. And honestly, doctor, they give up on this and they settle on that, or they chase that so hard and they give up on the family aspect. So thank you for giving that balance. I know it's never going to
insight,
be fully in balance, but thanks for that insight because it is going to be a gem to a lot of the
I
listeners.
mean, you let
that
it
are coming in.
you let us know that it is possible, and
Yeah.
you just have to figure out. And anybody who needs to figure that out, I suggest you talk to Dr. James Bryant because essentially he's figured it out. And I'm not saying to perfection because there's no perfection, but to figure
course.
it out to make progress in your life because ultimately you want to. If you want to stay married, you want to still chase success, you have to figure out that balance or
And
whatever it is that you're
I
looking
would
for.
ask Cecil if you want to stay happily married,
Yeah.
There you
Just
go.
because there's some
That's true.
people that are staying married that aren't happy.
Yep. Yep.
You're
I'm
right.
happily
Yep.
married.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love being a dad. I love being a husband. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being an engineer. I love being a podcaster. I love all of these things.
There you go.
I want to
So,
say
but
that's
yeah,
the pinnacle of
it takes work.
success for a family man building a brand. That's the pinnacle, man. And again, Dr. Brian, you can probably attest to this that no amount of money can amount to the peace you have on a daily basis. Happy wife, happy life. Your
Yep.
children are thriving, career going well. Honestly, they can give you $1 billion and tell you they take all of that away from you. You probably be like, I don't know, man. You only live once. I'm good where I'm at. For me, as a family man building a brand, that's the pinnacle. So I talk about this all the time, financial freedom. That's what we're aiming to do. We're not aiming to become crazy billionaires. No, financial freedom is where it's at while maintaining the family structure and enjoying life that way. So want to thank you for that, man. You gave us some key gems. This has been a great episode for all the listeners listening in. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to give us a rating. If you felt like this episode really helped you out and all the other episodes prior to this, make sure to leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening in on. This has been a great episode of Family Man Building the Brand. Thanks again, Dr. James Bryant.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.